Governor, the Golden State holds the nation's peak poverty figures once living costs are factored in, sitting at 23.5%. This implies almost 1 out of every 4 residents exists in destitution, even though you boast the planet's 5th biggest economy. So how can you call that a triumph? Ben Shapiro's tone sliced into Gavin Newsom's introductory speech like a razor through satin. The crowd at the Fox News studio, 200 souls crammed into the custom-built arena, fell completely quiet. Events like this rarely began in such a manner, where moderators posed queries and rivals awaited their slot. Yet Shapiro had just cut off Newsom's polished opening about the state's amazing achievements with a figure that turned that achievement into a flop. Newsom halted halfway through a phrase, his rehearsed grin wavering for a mere second. He was only 30 seconds into his preamble, the speech regarding California, guiding the country in invention, variety, environmental efforts, and the American destiny. But Shapiro had just wrecked it with a statistic. Well, Ben, I am aware you departed from California. Newsom attempted to shift to a personal angle, trying to focus on Shapiro abandoning the region to paint him as the villain. I departed because purchasing a home was impossible on a 6-figure wage while you reside in a $3.7 million estate funded by the public. So let us discuss why a thriving podcaster could not afford the state, yet a politician lives in opulence. The spectators rustled, realizing this encounter would be unique. Brett Baer, the Fox News arbiter positioned betwixt them, attempted to restore order, saying, "Gentlemen, we possess 90 minutes for this discussion, so maybe we ought to proceed." "Perhaps the governor ought to respond to the query," Shapiro stated, without averting his gaze from Newsom. "A 23.5% poverty level is the country's worst, and you have served as governor for 6 years, prior to that acting as lieutenant governor and mayor of San Francisco. You have wielded authority in the state for almost 2 decades, yet the poverty metrics have deteriorated. So tell me why." Newsom glanced at Baer for assistance, but the moderator simply stared back. This was an argument where inquiries were valid, and Shapiro's challenge was supported by actual data from the Census Bureau's supplemental poverty measure. "California possesses the steepest living expenses in the country," Newsom replied, attempting to appear rational. "That is a consequence of our prosperity because folks desire to reside here, which pushes demand and raises prices, although we are striving for affordability." "You are striving by exacerbating the issue," Shapiro interjected, noting the median house cost in the state is $800,000 against a national mean of $417,000. Your rules, your zoning ordinances, and your ecological constraints render constructing homes impossible, causing costs to soar while the middle class departs. You shed more than 500,000 net inhabitants from 2020 to 2023. They are not exiting because the state is overly prosperous. They are exiting because residing there is unaffordable. Newsom's grin had entirely vanished now, merely 45 seconds into the contest, and he was already backpedaling. This scenario was not meant to occur, as he was the eloquent governor with White House dreams, while Shapiro was merely a rapid-fire internet host. Newsom was expected to radiate command, while Shapiro appeared as a hostile pundit. Yet Shapiro possessed figures, precise figures, and figures were indifferent to charm. "We are constructing more residences than ever before," Newsom attempted to argue. "You are erecting opulent apartments priced at $1 million. You are failing to construct dwellings that educators, caregivers, and firemen can pay for. That is the reason they are fleeing, that is the reason I departed, and that is why we shall dedicate the ensuing 90 minutes to analyzing why the state, despite possessing every natural perk like climate, harbors, farming, and tech sectors, has grown too expensive for average earners under your command." The crowd cheered, though not all, since it was a diverse group as mandated by the event contract. Yet enough clapped that Newsom sensed the pressure. He had stepped onto the platform believing he could finesse his way through, shift to critiquing Trump and conservatives, and focus on morals and foresight. Shapiro had no intention of allowing that. This event would focus on truths, digits, consequences, and deliverables. And Gavin Newsom was on the verge of realizing his history could not withstand such examination. 6 hours prior, Gavin Newsom relaxed in his private suite at the Fox News base in New York, checking his points one last time with his top aides. He felt positive and assured regarding this confrontation, which had been planned for 3 months ever since Shapiro, an ex-resident who moved to Florida, had openly dared Newsom to justify his state's laws on a national broadcast. Newsom's squad at first ignored the idea, saying, "You do not argue with internet personalities since you are a state leader with higher goals and it is beneath your station." However, the dare gathered momentum. Other pundits noticed it. Right-wing networks amplified the question of whether Newsom feared justifying his performance, and even certain left-leaning publications began wondering why he refused to argue his state's strategies. Eventually, his political strategists crunched the numbers, deciding that declining appeared frail but agreeing, and triumphing would cement him as a rational liberal who could manage difficult inquiries. It could attract centrists and demonstrate he was prepared for the national arena in 2028. So they agreed. Fox News, serving as the location, was the middle ground, representing Shapiro's turf, but featuring a skilled referee and strict guidelines, including 90 minutes, introductions, organized themes, closing remarks, and a live crowd of 200 picked for fairness. "Recall the tactic," his chief of staff urged, while going over the playbook once more. "Remain tranquil. Do not permit his speedy speech to shake you. Shift to principles when he digs into details. Frame it as hope against pessimism, and revert to Trump whenever feasible. Remind the public that Shapiro backed the former president, and that this truly concerns the nation's destiny." Newsom concurred, having participated in hundreds of arguments, viewing this as merely one more instance. Shapiro might speak rapidly and hurl data, yet Newsom had served 6 years as the state leader and 4 years prior to that as the second-in-command. He understood the state statutes thoroughly and could uphold them. "If he mentions the French Laundry incident," his media manager asked, "I will say I apologized back then, as it was a momentary error during a tough time, and took ownership before moving to our superior pandemic management compared to conservative states. If he references your children's private schooling, that is a private family matter I do not debate openly, though I take pride in our public education funding, which is the highest per student in the country." They had practiced all of this, ensuring every possible assault had a scripted reply, and every critique had a deflection to conservative shortcomings. Newsom had been coached by the finest and was prepared. What he did not realize was that 3 levels below in a meeting room transformed into a tactical center. Ben Shapiro sat amidst a different variety of readiness. Shapiro had dedicated 3 months to this task, not merely scanning talking points, but conducting deep investigations. He had employed analysts to gather everything regarding the state under Newsom's command, covering every statute, every result, every blunder, and every instance of insincerity. The tactical room resembled a district attorney's office, with whiteboards draped in metrics, folders sorted by subject, printed diagrams, photographs, and actual invoices, including the itemized tab from Newsom's French Laundry meal that had been leaked months prior. "Let us check the framework one last time," Shapiro told his crew. He spoke fast, as was his habit, but with exactitude. "We possess 90 minutes divided into 6 segments of 15 minutes, and I must dismantle him methodically." His head researcher displayed the plan on a monitor. "Segment 1 covers introductions and the homeless crisis, so hit him with the $24 billion spent and the 42% rise to force him to justify the unjustifiable. Segment 2 covers the middle-class exodus, focusing on the 500,000 net loss and truck rental rates to make him clarify why residents are escaping. Segment 3 involves business relocation like Tesla and Oracle, forcing him to explain why his tax contributors are departing. Segment 4 addresses crime and Proposition 47 alongside the shoplifting plague, so show the clips of individuals ransacking shops. Segment 5 targets personal insincerity regarding the French Laundry, private academies, and plumpjack wineries receiving state perks, compelling him to defend living by different rules than he enforces. Segment 6 covers failures such as the high-speed train, energy prices, and water logistics to highlight every major initiative that is over budget and underperforming. Shapiro verified each portion. For every subject, he possessed exact figures, precise illustrations, and distinct conflicts between Newsom's words and Newsom's actions. The vital thing is to prevent him from dodging, Shapiro noted. He will attempt to shift to Trump, to Republican regions, and to morals, so every time he does, steer it back to California, his history, and his outcomes. Do not permit him to keep this theoretical, but rather make it tangible. His producer posed the logical inquiry of what happens if he provides strong responses, or if the figures are incorrect. The figures are not incorrect, as they originate from the Census Bureau, from the state's own financial papers, and from scholarly research, and he lacks strong responses. That is the reason his staff attempted to evade this confrontation for months. His history is indefensible. I simply need to ensure he cannot conceal it, with charisma. At 8 in the evening Eastern Time, the studio lights illuminated the stage. Brett Baer sat in the middle, with Gavin Newsom to his right, clad in a flawlessly fitted blue suit with pristine hair, appearing every bit the future leader he envisioned himself to be. Ben Shapiro sat to his left, dressed more informally in trousers and a dress shirt without a tie, with a pile of ominous-looking binders before him. "Good evening," Baer commenced, welcoming everyone to this unique debate titled The California Clash. "We are gathered to talk about the state's policies, hurdles, and destiny. Governor Newsom, you are allotted 2 minutes for an introductory speech." Newsom grinned at the lens, appearing warm, sure, and statesmanlike. "Thank you, Brett, and thank you to the network for arranging this significant dialogue. I am honored to be here to talk about the state's history of triumph under my guidance. California has spearheaded the country in financial expansion, standing as the 5th biggest economy globally. We have generated more employment than any other region. We have led on environmental measures, challenging the oil sector and funding clean power. We have safeguarded reproductive liberties and supported immigrant households. We have demonstrated that liberal principles and financial prosperity go together." He was finding his groove now, delivering the address he had rehearsed. "Now I am aware my adversary tonight departed California. He concluded our state was not suitable for him, which is his privilege, yet millions of individuals select California daily. They select our ingenuity, our variety, our morals, and our promise. While Ben critiques from the periphery, I am undertaking the difficult task of managing the biggest state in the nation, building chances, defending rights, and creating a future where everybody thrives. Governor, the state has the highest poverty rate in America when adjusted for cost of living." Shapiro's interruption lingered in the atmosphere. Baer appeared surprised. "Mr. Shapiro, the governor possesses 2 minutes, and he is utilizing it to list talking points rather than addressing reality. A 23.5% poverty level is the worst in the country, meaning nearly 1 in 4 Californians lives in destitution despite possessing the 5th largest economy. So how is that success?" Baer attempted to keep discipline, stating, "We will have time for counter-arguments." "I will yield my opening time," Shapiro stated, "for I merely want the governor to answer a single query. If the state is so successful, why do you possess the highest poverty rate in America?" The crowd was captivated. This was not how arguments typically proceeded, yet Shapiro had estimated that interrupting Newsom's slick intro would knock him off kilter and make him defensive from the onset. Newsom tried to retrieve his smile, saying, "Well, Ben, as I noted, you left the state, so maybe you are not the finest evaluator. I departed because I could not afford to purchase a residence on a 6-figure salary. I was earning over $200,000 annually from my media efforts, yet could not afford a respectable home in Los Angeles. I relocated to Florida, purchased a lovely house for half the cost, pay no state income tax, and have superior schools for my children. So, yes, I am highly qualified to judge why the middle class is fleeing California. Answer the inquiry regarding the 23.5% poverty rate. Newsom glanced at Bayer again, but received no assistance. The state has a high cost of living because we are desirable and people wish to live here. If people wish to live there, why did you lose over 500,000 net residents in 3 years? That is 500,000 more people leaving than arriving, which is a net loss. Those are not individuals who wish to live in the state. Those are individuals fleeing the state. Some people left during the pandemic, and they are not returning. The exodus commenced before the pandemic and sped up afterward. Your state lost population for the first time in history, not due to a virus, but due to your statutes. Newsom attempted to pivot, saying if you look at Republican areas like Texas and Florida, they possess their own issues. We are not debating Texas, we are debating California, your state, your statutes, and your outcomes, so defend them. Bayer interjected, sensing this could spiral. Let us move to our first organized segment regarding homelessness. Governor Newsom, the state has spent roughly $24 billion on homelessness since you assumed office. The homeless population has risen by 42% in that duration. What is your reply? Newsom took a breath, returning to scripted ground. Homelessness is a national emergency driven by housing prices, mental sickness, and addiction. It is a California emergency, Shapiro interrupted again. You possess 30% of the nation's homeless population with only 12% of the general population. This is not a national trouble, this is your trouble, and you have spent $24 billion making it worse. Shapiro produced a chart and displayed it to the lens. This represents the state's homeless count from 2019 to 2024. It began at 151,000 and now sits at 181,000. That is a 42% rise while you spent $24 billion. That equates to about $133,000 per homeless individual, meaning you could have purchased each of them a home in most parts of America for that sum. Newsom tried to interrupt, claiming that characterizes the funding incorrectly. Where did the funds go? I will tell you where they went: to consultants. The city of Los Angeles paid a firm $800,000 to research homelessness. Do you know what they produced? They produced a 200-page document suggesting more research. San Francisco spent $60,000 per tent for safe sleeping zones. You can purchase a small home in many states for $60,000. Yet your state spent it on a canvas shelter. Shapiro was firing rapidly now, not affording Newsom space to reply. You constructed supportive housing units at an average price of $750,000 per unit. The national mean is $150,000. You spent 5 times the national mean. That is not a housing emergency, that is a graft emergency. That is consultants and contractors fleecing taxpayers while homeless individuals perish on the sidewalks. The audience was entirely quiet. Some were nodding while others looked stunned at the figures. Newsom attempted to regain command, stating, building in the state is expensive due to land prices. Then alter your zoning laws. Alter your environmental review procedure that takes 7 years to sanction a project. Alter your regulations that render it impossible to build. You control all of this. You possess supermajorities in the legislature and could rectify it tomorrow. But you will not because your environmental lobby will not permit you. Your unions will not permit you. Your consultants are earning too much money from the existing system. Shapiro produced photographs, actual images of homeless camps in Venice Beach, in San Francisco, and in Oakland. This is what $24 billion purchased. Tent cities that resemble third-world nations. People dying from ailments and drug overdoses in broad daylight. Is this success? Newsom's face was red now, accusing Shapiro of cherry-picking the worst instances. These are not selected specifically. This is Venice Beach, which is one of the most expensive zip codes in America. This is the Tenderloin in San Francisco, where people step over human waste on their way to work. This is Oakland, where camps stretch for blocks. You have been governor for 6 years, and this deteriorated under your command. Bayer tried to moderate, asking Governor Newsom how he responds to the cost per unit critique. Newsom took a breath, trying to sound rational. Building supportive housing requires more than just construction, as it includes services, mental health treatment, and substance abuse counseling. Then itemize it, Shapiro demanded. Show me the breakdown. If it costs $750,000 per unit, where does that money go? What services cost $600,000 per person? Newsom did not possess an itemized breakdown. If he did, it would reveal how much went to administrative costs, consultant fees, union wages inflated by project labor agreements, environmental review costs, and permit fees. It would confirm Shapiro's argument about corruption. These are complicated projects, Newsom said. Complexity is a pretext for failure. Other states construct homeless housing for a fraction of the price. Other cities have reduced homelessness. You have increased it while spending more than anyone else. That is not complexity. That is incompetence. The first segment concluded with Newsom unable to justify the homelessness spending. Bayer moved to a commercial break. In the green room, Newsom's team was in panic mode. He is not letting you speak. His chief of staff said you need to demand equal time. He is just hurling numbers. The numbers are real. We need to pivot and focus on compassion versus cruelty, making it about values. But when they returned from the break, Shapiro had more numbers prepared. Next segment concerns the state's population loss, Bayer said. Mr. Shapiro, you mentioned this earlier, so please expand on it. Shapiro produced a truck rental price sheet, an actual printout from a rental website. This is from last week. I checked rental rates for moving trucks from Los Angeles to Austin, Texas. It costs $2,500 for a one-way truck rental. From Austin to Los Angeles, it costs $500 for the same truck and same distance. Why is it 5 times more expensive to leave California than to move there? He let the question hang. The audience could deduce the answer. Because 5 times more people are leaving than arriving. Truck rental prices are set by supply and demand. There is massive demand for trucks leaving the state and almost no demand for trucks going there. That is the market telling you that people are fleeing your state. Newsom tried to look unbothered, claiming some people relocate for various reasons. A 500,000-person net loss in 3 years is not random relocation. This is an exodus, and I can tell you exactly who is leaving. The middle class, such as teachers earning $65,000 a year who cannot afford rent. Nurses who cannot buy homes. Firefighters who commute 2 hours because they cannot afford to live in the communities they serve. The middle class is being destroyed by your policies. Shapiro produced more statistics. The median home price in California is $800,000, while in Texas it is $350,000 for the same size house. Your policies, zoning restrictions, environmental regulations, and permit fees make housing artificially expensive, so the middle class leaves. Your gas prices are $5.50 per gallon, while the national average is $3.40. Your gas taxes and regulations add over $2 per gallon. Working families cannot afford to drive to work. Your state income tax goes up to 13.3%. Texas is 0. Florida is 0. Tennessee is 0. And Nevada is 0. You tax the middle class into poverty, then wonder why they leave. Newsom tried to interrupt, saying, "But we have better schools. You rank 40th in education outcomes, 40th. You spend $17,000 per student, which is the highest in the nation, and rank 40th in results. Texas spends $12,000 and ranks 28th. You spend more and get worse results." The audience gasped at that. Shapiro had the education statistics ready, highlighted in a binder. He pulled out the National Assessment of Educational Progress scores. 4th grade reading in California ranks 37th. 8th grade math in California ranks 39th. Your schools are failing, and you know it. That is why you send your 4 kids to private school. Newsom's jaw tightened. My children's education is not a topic for debate. It is completely relevant. You send your kids to Sacramento Country Day School, which costs $30,000 per year per child for elite private education. But you oppose school choice that would let poor families send their kids to better schools. Why do you get to choose, but they do not? That is a personal family decision. Exactly. It is a personal decision, and it should be a personal decision for everyone. But you keep Black and Hispanic kids trapped in failing public schools while your kids get an elite education. You will not even send your kids to the public schools you claim are adequate. If you do not trust them for your children, why should poor families trust them for theirs? This hit hard. The hypocrisy was undeniable. Newsom sent his kids to private school while opposing school choice. The audience could see it. I believe in strengthening public education, Newsom said. Then send your kids there. Put them in Oakland public schools that rank in the bottom 10% nationally. Or put them in Sacramento public schools. Prove that you believe in the system you force everyone else to use. Newsom had no response to that because he would never send his kids to those schools. They were not good enough, and everyone watching knew it. Shapiro pressed the advantage. This is the pattern with you. You live differently than you govern. You tell residents to make sacrifices you will not make. You tell them to accept schools you will not accept. You tell them to pay taxes you avoid. You tell them to follow rules you break. Let me ask the audience, Shapiro said, turning to face the crowd. How many of you used to live in California? About 30 hands went up, representing 15% of the audience. Keep your hands up. How many of you left because it was too expensive? All 30 hands stayed up. How many of you are better off now than you were in California? All 30 hands stayed up. Shapiro turned back to Newsom. There is your answer. The people who left your state are better off. They have more money, better housing, lower taxes, and a better quality of life. That is not success for California. That is failure. Newsom tried one more pivot, mentioning incredible innovation and technology companies. Let us talk about that. Shapiro pulled out another list. Tesla moved its headquarters from Palo Alto to Austin. Oracle moved from Silicon Valley to Austin. Hewlett-Packard, born in California, moved to Houston. Charles Schwab moved from San Francisco to Texas. CBRE Group moved from Los Angeles to Dallas. These are not small businesses. These are Fortune 500 companies. Your tax base and your job creators are leaving. Why? Newsom tried to minimize it, saying, we still have more Fortune 500 headquarters than any other state. You had more. You are losing them, and you are losing their tax revenue and jobs. Elon Musk, who built Tesla in California, moved the company to Texas. He did not move because of the weather. He moved because of your policies, your regulations, your taxes, and your hostile business environment. Shapiro had the receipts, containing actual quotes from CEOs explaining why they left. Elon Musk said California has become complacent about its economic success and has taken it for granted. He is talking about you. Oracle CEO Larry Ellison said we were able to recruit better talent in Texas with a lower cost of living. Translation, your state is so expensive people will not move there for jobs. HP CEO Antonio Neri said we need to be in an environment that allows us to operate efficiently. Translation, your regulations are strangling business. Newsom tried to defend, saying these are business decisions based on many factors, yes, and all those factors point to California being a terrible place to do business. High taxes, extreme regulations, expensive energy, labor laws that make hiring difficult, and a legal environment that encourages frivolous lawsuits. You have created a hostile environment for business, and you wonder why they leave. Shapiro pulled out economic growth statistics. California GDP growth was 2.1% last year. The national average was 2.5%. Texas was 4.3%. Florida was 3.8%. You are growing slower than the national average despite having every natural advantage. And your per capita income growth, meaning how much the average resident's income grows, ranks 47th. 47th out of 50 states. You are one of the worst states in America for income growth. The audience was stunned. California, the success story, ranked 47th in income growth. Newsom tried to explain that they have a higher baseline income. So you are stagnant. People in California are not getting richer. They are getting poorer relative to the cost of living, which brings us back to the poverty rate of 23.5%. Bayer jumped in. We need to move to our next segment regarding crime and public safety. Governor Newsom, Proposition 47, made theft under $950 a misdemeanor. Critics say this led to a retail theft epidemic. Your response? Newsom looked relieved to have a different topic. Proposition 47 was passed by voters, not by me. And crime statistics show that overall crime is down because stores stopped reporting. Shapiro was ready for this. When district attorneys will not prosecute, why would stores waste time reporting theft? Let me show the audience what your policies created. He signaled to the control room. A video played on the monitors. Security camera footage of people walking into stores, filling garbage bags with merchandise, and walking out. Security guards stood by doing nothing. Multiple clips from different stores and different cities showed the same pattern. That is San Francisco. That is Los Angeles. That is your policy. Theft under $950 is effectively legal, so people steal with impunity. Organized retail theft has become a business model. More footage showed people with shopping carts full of stolen goods walking out of Target, out of Walgreens, and out of CVS. Nobody stopped them. Walgreens closed 17 stores in San Francisco because they could not operate with this level of theft. CVS closed 12. Target had to lock up basic items. Deodorant is in locked cases. Toothpaste and shampoo are locked up. In one of the richest cities in America, you have to ask a clerk to unlock a case to buy deodorant. That is not a functioning society. The audience was watching the videos in stunned silence. Some were shaking their heads. This is what progressive prosecution looks like. Your district attorneys, appointed by officials you support, will not prosecute these crimes. San Francisco DA Chesa Boudin was so bad that liberal San Francisco recalled him and voted him out in a special election. That is how bad it got. Newsom tried to push back, saying, public safety is a priority. Then why are stores closing? Why are people fleeing San Francisco and Oakland? Why is Union Square, once the shopping destination of the West Coast, now half empty? Because stores cannot operate there. Shapiro had the statistics ready. Retail square footage in San Francisco is down 32% since 2019. Stores are leaving because they cannot stay in business when theft is legal. And you know who that hurts? Poor neighborhoods. Stores close in their communities. They have to travel farther to buy basic goods. Your progressive policies hurt the people you claim to help. Bayer looked at his notes. We are entering our fifth segment. Mr. Shapiro, you mentioned the governor's personal conduct earlier, so expand on that. Shapiro's expression hardened. This was personal for him. November 6th, 2020. Governor, what were you doing that day? Newsom knew exactly where this was going. I don't recall the specifics. Let me refresh your memory. You were at the French Laundry restaurant in Napa Valley. It was a birthday party for Jason Kinney, a lobbyist. 12 people were at the dinner indoors with no masks at a restaurant, charging $350 per person. The total bill was over $15,000. Shapiro pulled out the receipt. The actual leaked receipt from the dinner was shown to the camera. That same week, you told Californians they could not have Thanksgiving with their families. Restaurants were ordered closed. Small businesses were dying. You held daily press conferences telling people to stay home, wear masks, and avoid gatherings. And you were at a $15,000 dinner with lobbyists. Newsom had apologized for this at the time, but Shapiro was not done. Who was at that dinner? Jason Kinney, a lobbyist for the California Medical Association. Dustin Corcoran, CEO of the California Medical Association. Other healthcare lobbyists, people who had business before the state. 2 months later, the California Medical Association received a $150 million contract from the state. Was that discussed over your $300 meal? That is implying corruption. I am not implying, I am stating that you had lobbyists at an expensive dinner during a lockdown you imposed, and those lobbyists later got massive state contracts. That is called pay-to-play. That is called hypocrisy. Shapiro pulled out more examples. Your Plumpjack wineries are your family business. During the pandemic, you designated wineries as essential businesses. They stayed open. Other small businesses were forced to close, but your family's wineries operated. Then your Plumpjack businesses received $2.9 million in PPP loans. You are worth $20 million. You did not need PPP loans. You took them anyway, while small businesses that actually needed help could not get them. Those loans went to employees. Those loans went to businesses you own. Businesses that were already designated essential and allowed to operate. Businesses owned by a multimillionaire. While actual small businesses were dying, you were collecting millions in federal aid for your family's companies. The audience was restless. This was not abstract policy. This was personal corruption. Your kids, Shapiro continued, 4 children all attending Sacramento Country Day School, $30,000 per year each. That is $120,000 in private school tuition annually. While you tell poor families in Oakland and Los Angeles that their public schools are adequate. While you oppose school choice. While you fight against charter schools. I support public education. You support it for other people's children, not for your own. You will not send your kids to the schools you force everyone else to accept. That is not supporting public education. That is elitism. That is rules for thee, but not for me. Shapiro was on a roll now. Let us talk about climate. You lecture about climate change. You have banned gas-powered cars by 2035. You push for electric vehicles, and then you tell people not to charge their electric cars during heat waves because the grid cannot handle it. You mandate a technology the grid cannot support. We are transitioning. You are failing. You have the highest electricity rates in the continental United States. You have rolling blackouts during heat waves. You shut down nuclear plants, and then wonder why you do not have enough power. And while you lecture Californians about reducing emissions, you fly on private jets. Your administration has taken dozens of private flights, each one producing more emissions than an average Californian produces in a year. But you get to fly private while telling workers they cannot afford gas for their cars. Every example landed. Every piece of hypocrisy was documented. Newsom living by different rules than he imposed on everyone else. Here is the pattern, Shapiro said, looking directly at the camera. Gavin Newsom locks down California, but goes to luxury dinners. He closes small businesses, but keeps his family's wineries open. He opposes school choice, but sends his kids to elite private schools. He lectures about climate while flying private. He taxes the middle class while living in a mansion. He tells people they cannot afford housing while he owns multiple properties. He is the embodiment of progressive hypocrisy. Rules for thee, but not for me. Newsom was visibly angry now. You are distorting. I am showing receipts. The French laundry bill is real. The private school enrollment is public. The PPP loans are documented. The private jet flights are tracked. These are not distortions. These are facts. Bayer tried to move forward. Final segment before closing statements. Mr. Shapiro, you wanted to discuss California's infrastructure projects. Let us talk about the high-speed rail, Shapiro said, pulling out the thickest binder yet. California high-speed rail was approved by voters in 2008. They were told it would cost $33 billion. It would connect San Francisco to Los Angeles. It would be completed by 2020. Here we are in 2025. Governor, how many miles of operational high-speed rail does California have? Newsom knew this was a disaster. We are making progress on the initial segment in the Central Valley. How many operational miles? The project has faced challenges. How many operational miles of track can people ride on today? Silence. 0, Shapiro said. The answer is 0. 15 years after approval. Over $20 billion spent. 0 operational miles. You have built some concrete structures, some overpasses, some bridges to nowhere, but no functional high-speed rail. He pulled out photos. concrete pillars standing in empty fields, incomplete structures, construction sites that looked abandoned. The current cost projection is $128 billion, nearly 4 times the original estimate, for a project that has produced nothing. For comparison, China built 25,000 miles of high-speed rail in the same time period. You cannot build 500 miles in California. This is complex engineering. It is not engineering. Japan built bullet trains in the 1960s. This is corruption, bureaucracy, and unions inflating costs. You are paying construction workers $150,000 a year to move dirt. The private sector could build this for a third of the cost in half the time. Shapiro had the cost breakdowns. Your project labor agreements require union wages that are triple market rates. Your environmental review processes takes 7 years. Your land acquisition costs are inflated because you announce routes before buying land. So property owners hold out for maximum prices. This is not a failure of engineering, it is a failure of governance. We are committed to completing. You have been committed for 15 years with 0 results. This is a $100 billion failure that exemplifies everything wrong with California government. Overpromise, overspend, underdeliver. Bayer jumped in. We are running short on time. Let us move to closing statements. Governor Newsom, you have 2 minutes. Newsom took a breath. He had been battered for 90 minutes. Time to try to recover with a strong close. Thank you, Brett. Look, I came here tonight knowing that Ben would throw statistics and attacks. That is what he does. But governing is not about statistics. It is about values. It is about vision. And California represents a vision of America's future. A diverse, inclusive, innovative future where we tackle climate change, where we protect rights, where we build opportunity for everyone. He was finding his rhythm again, back to the aspirational rhetoric. Yes, we have challenges, every state does, but we are not running away from them like Ben did. We are staying and fighting. Fighting for affordable housing, fighting for good schools, fighting for clean energy, fighting for an America that looks like California. Diverse, dynamic, forward-thinking. Ben can throw all the numbers he wants, but he is ignoring California's incredible success. Our innovation economy, our world-leading universities, our cultural influence, our moral leadership on issues like climate and immigration and rights. We are not perfect, but we are building the future while other states cling to the past. So, yes, I am proud of California, proud of what we have accomplished, proud of what we represent. And I will continue fighting for a California and an America that lives up to our values. He sat back. It was a decent close. Not great, but decent. Back to vision and values. Away from the statistics that had destroyed him all night. Bayer turned to Shapiro. Mr. Shapiro, your closing statement. Shapiro did not need notes. He had been building to this for 90 minutes. Governor Newsom just did what he has done all night. Talked about values when he cannot defend outcomes. Talked about vision when the reality is disaster. Let me remind everyone what we have established tonight with facts, not rhetoric. California has the highest poverty rate in America at 23.5%. That is not a vision. That is failure. California spent $24 billion on homelessness and made it 42% worse. That is not fighting for people. That is incompetence. California lost over 500,000 residents. The middle class is fleeing. That is not diversity and dynamism. That is exodus. California's schools rank 40th despite highest spending. Your own kids do not attend them. That is not moral leadership. That is hypocrisy. California has organized retail theft because you made it legal. Stores are closing. That is not progress. That is chaos. California spent 15 years and $20 billion on high-speed rail and built 0 operational miles. That is not innovation. That is corruption. Shapiro leaned forward, speaking directly to the camera. Gavin Newsom represents everything wrong with modern progressivism. He lectures about climate while flying private jets. He lectures about equity while sending his kids to elite schools. He lectures about affordable housing while living in a mansion. He lectures about following rules while breaking them at the French Laundry. He spent billions making problems worse while blaming everyone but himself. He says I ran away from California. I did not run away. I escaped. Escaped from a state that taxed me into poverty despite a six-figure income. Escaped from failing schools. Escaped from crime and homelessness and dysfunction. And I am thriving in Florida. Better quality of life, more opportunity, lower costs, safer streets. That is not California's success. That is California's failure. And tonight, Governor Newsom could not defend it because his record is indefensible. His policies are disasters, and his hypocrisy is undeniable. California does not have a revenue problem. It has the highest taxes in America. California has a leadership problem, and that problem is standing right next to me. Pretending that failure is success, that exodus is desirable, that dysfunction is vision. Californians deserve better. Americans deserve better. And tonight, we have seen exactly why Gavin Newsom's presidential ambitions are a joke. Because if you cannot run California without destroying it, you have no business running America. Shapiro sat back. The audience erupted in applause. Not everyone. The Democrats in the crowd stayed silent. But enough that it was clear who won this debate. Bayer wrapped up quickly. That concludes tonight's debate. Thank you to both participants. The cameras stayed on for another minute. Newsom and Shapiro shook hands perfunctorily. Newsom's smile was forced. He knew he had been destroyed. He knew the clips would be everywhere. He knew his 2028 campaign had just been badly damaged. Shapiro knew it too. He had done what he came to do. Exposed Newsom's record. Made him defend the indefensible. Proved that charm does not work against facts. As the lights came down, Newsom walked off stage to his team, waiting in the wings. Their faces told him everything. This had been a disaster, and within an hour, the internet would confirm it. The video clips started going viral before Newsom even left the studio. Not partisan editing, just raw footage of the most devastating exchanges. California has the highest poverty rate in America. How is that a success story? Clip 1 had 5 million views in an hour. You spent $24 billion on homelessness and made it 42% worse. Clip 2 had 10 million views. You send your kids to $30,000 private schools while opposing school choice for poor families. Clip 3 had 15 million views. The French laundry exchange, the high-speed rail failure, the U-Haul rates showing exodus. Every devastating moment was captured and shared across every platform. By midnight, Shapiro destroys Newsom was trending #1 on Twitter. Not from conservative accounts pushing an agenda. From everyone. Liberal journalists watching the debate had to admit it was a bloodbath. I am progressive, and I support Newsom's policies, but he got destroyed tonight. Couldn't defend the numbers. Shapiro came with receipts. Newsom came with talking points. Facts won. That was not a debate, that was a public execution. Even MSNBC's coverage was brutal. Governor Newsom struggled to defend California's homeless crisis. Ben Shapiro had specific statistics that Newsom couldn't counter. CNN reported Shapiro repeatedly pressed Newsom on California's poverty rate, exodus, and failed high-speed rail project. Newsom pivoted to values but couldn't defend outcomes. The New York Times wrote that, in a contentious debate, the California governor was unable to defend his record. By the next morning, the full debate had been watched 40 million times on YouTube. The clips had been shared over 100 million times across all platforms. It was the most-watched political debate in years. Newsom's team went into crisis mode, scheduled media appearances to do damage control, but every interview was the same. Reporters asked Shapiro's questions. Governor, he said you spent $24 billion on homelessness and it got worse. What is your response? Governor, can you explain the $750,000 per unit cost for homeless housing? Governor, why do your children attend private school if California's public schools are adequate? Newsom tried the same pivots he had used in the debate. This is about values. We are building the future. Republicans want to go backward. None of it worked, because Shapiro had framed everything around outcomes, results, and numbers, and Newsom had no good answers. Within a week, his national polling cratered. He had been at 18% for the 2028 Democratic nomination before the debate, tied for second place. After the debate, he dropped to 7%, behind Kamala Harris, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro, and Pete Buttigieg. Donors started getting nervous. Major California donors who had been preparing to back him for 2028 began hedging. Can he defend his record nationally? Tonight showed he cannot. His approval rating in California dropped from 54% to 42% in 2 weeks. Republicans immediately started using debate clips in campaign ads. Gavin Newsom could not defend California's failures. Why would we give him more power? The California recall movement gained momentum, always simmering but never successful. They would not get enough signatures to force a recall, but it showed weakness. 3 months after the debate, major companies announced they were leaving California. Each press release mentioned the same issues Shapiro had raised: high taxes, excessive regulation, cost of living, and dysfunction. We are relocating our headquarters to Austin to provide better opportunities for our employees in a more affordable environment. Translation: California is too expensive and dysfunctional. Each announcement was another validation of Shapiro's arguments. Each one was another blow to Newsom's credibility. 6 months after the debate, Newsom held a press conference. He announced he was forming an exploratory committee for 2028. Required procedural step, but everyone knew what it meant. He was running. The press conference was painful to watch. Every question was a variation of Shapiro's debate attacks. Governor, how do you respond to criticism that California's poverty rate undermines your electability? Governor, what is your plan to address the exodus of middle-class families from California? Governor, business leaders cite the issues Ben Shapiro raised in your debate. How do you win back their confidence? Newsom gave the same answers he had given in the debate: vision, values, future. But they rang hollow now. Everyone had seen that those answers did not work when confronted with facts. A year after the debate, Newsom quietly announced he would not run for president in 2028. The official statement said he wanted to focus on finishing the important work in California. Translation: the debate had destroyed his national viability. Political analysts were blunt. The Shapiro debate ended Newsom's presidential ambitions. He could not defend California's record, couldn't explain the failures, couldn't overcome the hypocrisy. That 90-minute debate did more damage than years of opposition research could have done. The debate became legendary in political circles, taught in communications classes at universities as a case study in preparation versus charm. What happens when a polished politician faces someone with detailed facts and will not let them deflect? Conservative media called it the night Gavin Newsom's presidential dreams died. Liberal media called it a masterclass in how not to debate. Everyone agreed Shapiro had destroyed him, not through cheap shots or personal attacks, through relentless, specific, documented facts about Newsom's record that he could not defend. Ben Shapiro's podcast the next day was straightforward. Last night was not about me destroying Gavin Newsom. It was about reality destroying Gavin Newsom. I just forced him to confront it on live television. He is a talented politician, great hair, great smile, great at delivering talking points. But when you actually have to defend policies with facts, charm does not work. Numbers do not care about your rhetoric. California's numbers are a disaster. Highest poverty rate, homeless epidemic, middle-class exodus, business flight, failing schools, retail theft, energy failures, infrastructure failures. None of that is disputable. Those are facts from government sources. I did not destroy Newsom. His record destroyed him. I just made him face it. The podcast was downloaded 15 million times. The debate had elevated Shapiro's profile dramatically. He was now one of the most influential conservative voices in America. All from 90 minutes of making a governor defend his record. 5 years later, in 2030, Newsom's term as governor ended. He did not run for Senate or any other office. Just quietly left politics, went back to his family's business interests, gave occasional speeches for large fees. But his political career was over. The debate had done that. 90 minutes where charm met facts and lost. where vision met outcomes and couldn't survive, where a smooth-talking politician discovered that you cannot spin your way past systematic failure. California continued struggling with the same problems. The next governor inherited the homeless crisis, the exodus, and the dysfunction. Some things got better. Some got worse. But Gavin Newsom's legacy was set. Not by his policies, not by his vision. By 90 minutes on live television where he could not defend his record. Where Ben Shapiro asked simple questions. Why is California failing? And Gavin Newsom had no good answers. That was the legacy. Not the presidential campaign that never happened. Not the transformative leadership that never materialized. Just a debate where facts destroyed rhetoric. And everyone who watched remembered it. The debate that ended a presidential campaign. The 90 minutes that proved charm does not beat facts. The night Gavin Newsom learned that if you cannot defend your record, you do not deserve higher office. That was the California disaster debate. And it was exactly as advertised.